Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. It is episode 407. I think it's 407, right? Yeah, 407. We're talking about more about the Ukraine's offensive, and we're also talking about is Iran backing down. I've I've got the title wrong. So the original title is "Overreach in Kursk and Iran tapping out?" ? On Monday we talked about this offensive that was about a week old at the time, and so it was all about like where are they going to go next and what's going to happen. And we're starting to see some reports that they may have overreached a little bit. And so what are next steps if that's the case? There's some reports that they have decided to double down and send more troops in and continue to exploit their success. But then there's also stories of the Russians are finally moving forces in. So we're going to kind of look at that a little more to see where we think that might be going, because we're still more indications that the Russians are actually having some pretty decent success in places that aren't in the Kursk region. So we'll look at that. And then also with Iran, it's like, let's be honest, Joe, we all thought, a week ago, actually, we would have had this whole response kick off, but it hasn't happened. And so I'm interested to see I wonder if Iran decides, what, our ego is not worth it. Yeah, they hit us where we live, but at the same time,
I don't believe that for a minute.
I'm just saying, I wonder if they have got a longer game that they're playing is kind of where I was going to go with that.
Well, that's entirely possible, but they cannot not respond. Something has to happen because Hamas and Hezbollah are watching to see what their benefactor does. And if their benefactor isn't willing to defend them in their capital, since it was a Hamas leader who died, then why should they defend Iranian interests way out at the sharp end of the spear? So I think that Iran has some long-term skin in the game from that regard. They cannot not respond. Now, they claim they're waiting until after negotiations tomorrow on a hostage deal. But I will say it yet again that I don't understand why we're having any sort of negotiation over people who continue to hold hostages. Any deal we had made with them originally should have been for all of the hostages. We should have never allowed them to continue to keep them. And I don't think we should be negotiating with hostage takers at all.
So we're going to get a little deeper into that. We've got Turkey is getting involved, and we've got, is the DOD kind of doing back channel, or not DOD, but the U.S. State Department doing back channel negotiations with Iran? Is Iran on one hand saying that we're getting ready to attack, but then on the other hand saying, well, maybe we'll dial it back in the short term? Like I said, I think they may have a longer game than what we're giving them credit for. Teeny Council this morning says, Ron, well, Ron, you got the link, brother. If you want to join us, if people don't, if the council members aren't free, and I understand this time of the morning is not convenient for everybody. We appreciate when people can make it, but if they can't, we still endeavor to bring good information to you folks.
So on that note, I want to comment on something Rick put in the chat. Did you see the story of the arrest warrant of Germany for a Ukrainian diver? A Ukrainian diver who does not appear to actually exist at all. It's a distraction to keep people from knowing what really happened. By the way, the warrant is issued against a Volodymyr Z. Huh. If only we knew of a Ukrainian with such a name.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So it's there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, and we'll be talking a little more about the Iran and Ukraine stuff. So,
and Josh, well done with the Iran so far away. That was beautiful. A flock of seagulls has been heard from today.
Yeah, I hear you there. Stalin to give me maybe time to get there. Well, you know, we've seen a lot of reports that, you know, because of the Iran situation, we basically don't have any carriers right now in the Pacific, which is interesting, I think.
Yep.
You know, that's that's the world we live in now, Joe. We don't.
You know, I shared something yesterday that there's a now deleted article that was on a Chinese university website that said that given the exact confluence of American or of world events right now and lack of American leadership, now is the time for China to act on Taiwan. Um, I think it's probably deleted because China was like, "Hey, man, shut up. We know, right? Already
Yeah.
in the works." But it's pretty interesting the absolute lack of American pushback in the Pacific. Uh, some might say it emboldens our enemies. You would have thought this was a lesson we would have learned in 1938 through somewhere around December 7th, 1941. But apparently we did not.
Well, you know, it's almost as if we don't prioritize the Pacific. Whatever. I. But who are we
Words and
to
actions have
question?
meaning. I remember a time when an American Secretary of State listed all of the nations that we would defend with force in Asia. And when he failed to mention a specific one, it was invaded like 2 months later. You might be sitting in the middle of it right now.
Yeah.
But
All right. So let's jump right into so Joe, we got a smaller panel today, so we can less bloviating and jump right into the things that we'll be talking about here.
how dare you,
Uh,
sir? I shall bloviate exactly as much as I always do.
I know, and me too, but there won't be anybody else bloviating, and we don't have to
No,
we don't have to compete against other people, so which is exactly how I know you and I like it.
dude, can you all not just make everything about Israel for 10 minutes?
What are
Please
we
stop.
talking about here?
I
And there,
just, my God, y'all. Y'all check your closets every morning for secret Jews. Come on, grow up.
all right. Let's jump in right into it here. I gotta open my link here again. Share my screen. Joe, it's almost like there's the global civil wars,
Almost
worldwide civil
like
wars developing. Here we've got a essentially, the whole Libya thing had died down for several years. The LNR led by Haftar, backed by UAE and Egypt, was fighting against the GNR, which was backed by Qatar and Turkey. They kind of came to well, I don't know if they were ever at peace really, but they were just not fighting as much. Well, they've decided they're probably going to go back at it. It says here, breaking, we have a new civil war in Libya again. The Libyan House of Representatives, backed by the UAE and Egypt, has ended all of its agreements with the Debate government backed by Qatar and Turkey. Both sides have started deployment of their forces for a new war. They have brought the art form of pickup truck warfare to just a new level. I don't know if you've noticed this. This was a thing back in the was it 2018 kind of time frame when all that stuff was going off before. But clearly, this collection of pickup trucks is unrivaled.
well, one wonders where they might have gotten them all. Working vehicles in Libya is not really a thing, but here they are. This also pits Turkey directly in conflict with Russia because there
Yeah.
are Wagner elements with the National Assembly. I guess they're calling it the House of Representatives in here. It's actually the
Yeah.
National Assembly. serving with the National Assembly's forces, and there are actual Turkish ground troops on the other side, and there have been for years. So a very interesting exchange here. We'll have to watch and see what develops from it.
Yeah, the interesting thing was a lot of UAE money was going to fund Wagner mercenary, who were basically taking the Russian gear that UAE had bought and manning it. So they were actually providing crews and things that for air defense systems and whatnot. I remember, especially some of those early fights. Some of these Russian, contractors got kind of caught, ahead of their skis and, either wound up dead or wound up, on the wrong side of captured. So that was kind of an eye opener to see the kind of strange bedfellows with, UAE and Egypt on the same side as Russia. So it all goes back to practicality and ultimately the people who will help you are the people who you will who you end up working with.
If you're backed by Qatar and Turkey, you are probably not the good guys.
Well, let's be honest here, Joe. I don't know that there's any good guys in this mess, especially with Russia on one side and Turkey and Qatar on the other side. So right, it is Libya. So God love them, let them kill each other or whatever it is they're going to do, and maybe it'll spur a growth in the pickup truck sales in the Middle East while they're at it. So a lot of like a Toyota Hilux. This is the one that Joe. Which pickup truck is this?
It's a Toyota, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember what the
on that. I can't remember that. But
yeah, it's a utility pickup truck that's essentially about as bog standard as a pickup truck can get. It makes a Hilux look complicated.
But it's a solid truck. It will go literally almost anywhere. So
yeah. The old Hiluxes were just so bulletproof, but the newer ones are basically, what is it? Not Tundras, but what's the small one here in the U.S.? It's basically the same truck.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a Toyota truck.
I'm not a big Toyota pickup truck guy. Anyway, all right, Land Cruiser, yeah. All right. So interesting to see the civil war in Libya starting to kick up again. We'll be following that to see if
for the win. Tacoma.
Yeah. The Toyota Tacoma, right. Which is basically like the Forerunner was basically like a Tacoma with a SUV back on it. Yeah.
Tacoma with factory KPV. Well done. Finish it.
Well, I saw both Hiluxes and Forerunner. The actual SUV in Syria. That were being used by both PMCs.
I'll tell you what's actually a nice vehicle, and again, you can't get it here. Is the Toyota Land Cruiser Military Edition, the SUV version, wide wheelbase. Good vehicle all around, but you can't buy it in America. So
interesting. It's almost like they don't want us to have it. It's too good for you guys.
Sad.
All right, let's move on to our next one. So, we've been talking on and off about this just nightmare scenario that's going on in the UK, and if anything, I think that UK is providing us the best potential evidence for some sort of globalist plan against people like us, right?
Let me answer the Lance Corporal Veterans $2 question real quick.
Yeah.
It was retracted.
Which side had civvies or regular army?
So the side with the Turkish and Qatar, which is the president's side, has the actual military. The Libyan National Assembly, the LNA, they have mostly conscripted civilians and volunteer militias.
Yeah.
Hope that answers the question.
Yes. All right. So this one kind of gets to some of the what's going on in Britain questions. Britain has proved globalists plan to use migrants as a mercenary army against the West. And, we've really seen some very shameful stuff coming out of essentially de facto Sharia law, the way these, Muslim crowds are able to completely wander the streets unhindered, while anybody who kind of decides to stand up for their country gets immediately shouted down. There's this is a kind of a thing that I've seen on X here the last couple of hours about the 61-year-old guy who basically gets, thrown in jail over basically saying like, fuck Islam or something along these lines. Okay, yeah, is that objectionable? Okay, sure. I think, I wouldn't say something like that, but I understand the sentiment based on what's happening in their streets there. And I sure as hell don't think that anybody should be have a negative impact because of, protesting against something that is, fairly upsetting.
I saw a video last night that I know is going to lead to the arrest of the white guys. So there was a group of Arab men walking down the street with expandable batons, just smashing cars and car windows and things like that. And what happens is a couple of guys run out of the pub, one of them with a chair in his hand, and he smashes the chair over one of the armed Muslim men walking down the street smashing cars. And they end up getting in a fight. That the British police are going to come after the guy who swung the chair, saying, well, the other guy was damaging property, but you struck another human being. When the guy was actually just defending that property from being destroyed by the rioters. What I find funny is that they keep talking about all these right-wing riots and violence, yet you're not seeing that on video. What you're seeing on video is a very different group of people committing violence. They're not the ones getting arrested.
Yeah. Well, the irony just goes, I hate to say it, it's just not even funny. Just the negatives that we're seeing. Let me just jump into the story here. Why do Western officials insist on gaslighting the public on illegal border crossings? Why do they attempt to destroy anyone that publicly opposes mass immigration from the third world? Yet, the laws in the books support the public's majority position. Yet government officials who often claim to be protecting democracy blazingly ignore these majority concerns. Why? It's almost like they have an agenda there, Joe. So it's all basically there is a claim from people on our side that this is all part of the Cloward Piven strategy, a social engineering method which uses large-scale relocation of migrants into a society in order to destabilize the nation. I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, I remember Glenn Beck back in the day, back in the 2000s, talking about Cloward and Piven, being a tool that's used against us. So, I mean, it's nothing new here, Joe. God love you. Where you live, I mean, you see it every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a claim. It is a fact. I mean, this is something that they've been doing and something they're using to make it happen. I mean, I don't understand why they're saying it's a claim. So.
Yeah, sorry, I had to let the cat out. All right, I'm back. It's so the author here says my theory goes beyond Cloward and Piven, though. He says to summarize his position is that I've mentioned this in previous articles, and I continue to believe that one of the main purposes for the establishment to leave borders open and entice illegals to enter is to create a migrant army. A situation in which millions of illegals will be offered easy citizenship in exchange for service. I also believe this migrant army will be used against the American public, the real citizenry, to impose martial law measures in the wake of national disaster. And so I this is where, it gets really kind of dark very quickly. And it's not just something, we talk about the Southwest border crisis that we're facing here in this country, and it's getting a lot of attention. Trump and Elon Musk, they had their big talk, and they talked quite a bit about, Kamala's inability to do anything in her time as the border czar, or whatever it is, was the designation. But it's happening in Britain, right? It's happening all over the West. It's happened, for years in Germany and France. You saw the effects of Muslim immigrants all over Europe. And so that's a matter of time before that comes to the U.S. in the levels that Donald Trump said the official numbers are somewhere around 11 million criminal aliens in the U.S. right now, but he was saying that it's actually much higher than that, where it's along the lines of 22 to 23 million illegals in the U.S. Now, the good news is we have a huge population compared to the United Kingdom, but at some point, you're going to start to see some really long-term negative effects. And you already have in some states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. These are all places where, concentrations of illegal immigrants and legal refugee status immigrants have had impacts. Ilhan Omar absolutely can be thankful for her, what is it, a Somali constituency that is basically single-handedly kept her in power. And I think she just won her primary the other day. So she is on to another stellar victory, and here's another 2 years.
Primary. She hasn't won a general election, so
that's what I'm saying. She's won the primary, but that area is pretty solid for her, isn't it?
Well, again, it matters who counts the votes, because when it looked like it wasn't going to go her way, they announced it may take us a couple of days to count these votes. Then all of a sudden she had an infusion of votes and she won.
Yeah.
So I guess it doesn't really matter what the environment is like. They're just going to switch the votes and make it happen anyway.
Right.
I'd also like to point out that the other squad members who have been replaced by people even worse than them. So let's not act like those were successes. So
Lance Corporal Veteran for $2 said a quarter of the Union soldiers were immigrants in the Civil War. Yeah, absolutely they were. But they were done at a time in which the United States was looking for large infusions of populations from countries in Europe, specifically in the 1860s. You had a large number of Irish immigrants coming over. In the 1880s, you started seeing a large number of Italian immigrants coming in. And, back in the Ellis Island days, it was, come one, come all. You just have to come through a port of entry, the correct port of entry.
That's still technically the law. I'm just
right. But my point is that, well, Joe, they say, well, if you came here, you could come in. Well, that was the law back then. That was legal immigration, right? It was, but let's be honest, the country of the late 19th century was not what you'd call a heavy-handed rules-based society like what we have now. And so there was pretty much all you had to do was show up and be, of use, and you could be a contributing member of society back then. That's not the case now. We've got an established culture. We've got 200 years, plus of history. Actually, we're close to 250 years of history. And, so infusions of large groups of immigrants from other countries absolutely do damage. Let's see. So I thought this was interesting. With a two-tier policing system in place, the migrants can do whatever they want without much fear of repercussions. In Europe, there is a added problem of expanding Islamic immigration, which is directed by religious doctrine to conquer non-believers. Now, we were talking about this the other day, Joe, with that church, these kind of conquests, mosques essentially. It says here from the Quran, fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day, and who do not consider unlawful what Allah and his messenger have made unlawful, and who do not adopt the religion of truth from those who were given this scripture. Fight until they are given jizya willingly while they are humbled. So that's, they're basically looking to, by hook or by crook, dominate the lands that they populate.
Well, that might be a little harder for them than they anticipate in the United States. And I think that's why you're not seeing what you're seeing in Great Britain.
Right.
In the United Kingdom, it's fairly safe to go on and subjugate or attempt to subjugate the people because they're not armed, and the power of the state is pretty amazing there. So it's a lot different.
Yeah, especially in the UK, it's a much different paradigm for what they're facing than what we're facing here. We do have when that authoritarian kind of heavy-handed jackboot shows up in the UK, you can either get smacked down or you can do what they tell you. It says here, British citizens have been victimized for over a decade by migrant attacks and organized crime. The two-tier policing system in the UK continues to protect these migrants from retribution while the government hides statistics that show how much violence is being committed by non-citizens. Anyway, this is concerning. It's easy to see it in the UK. A smaller country, it's kind of like, when you throw a rock into a really big pond, the ripples disappear very quickly. But, the UK is a very smaller pond. So the same size rock makes a huge impact over there. And we're seeing that absolutely. I haven't seen a day since all this stuff started kicking off 2 weeks ago that there hasn't been violence or mass, protesting in the streets. So, and this Keir Starmer guy, you gotta be freaking kidding me. All right, Joe, let's move on to our next thing here. So I thought this is, we're always reporting on things that are, kind of like the bad things in the world. And, that we're not what you'd call a solutions-based policy program. Because ultimately, we're not policy makers. We're just kind of reporting on what we're seeing in the world and kind of figuring out what comes next, right? But this one I thought is a kind of a good news type of situation, so I wanted to share this. And it's something that I've taken to heart, and I felt like when I read this article, I was like, oh, I do this, right? I felt good that I'm doing the right thing, and I just wanted to share this because I feel like my kids have been inoculated against Marxism. And so I thought I would hit this up because I think these are some fairly decent things to look at. Let's see, in 2007, President George W. Bush dedicated a memorial in Washington, D.C. to the 100 millions of people murdered by communism over the past century. The horrific record doesn't include the countless millions who have been imprisoned, tortured, or saw their dreams and potentialities ruined by Marxism. Yet today, Marxism is alive and well on the college campuses. You've got countries like China and North Korea are absolutely touting the benefits of, the socialism or communism in their countries. In reality, both of those countries are way more like fascist, authoritarian fascist dictatorships. Though North Korea is unique. It's maybe a communistic monarchy or something along those lines. So how can we keep our kids from being tempted, once they go off to college? Excuse me. It's always tough, Joe. Like as you know, you and I have talked about this. I've got a kid who's just graduated from high school and she's going off to college, and you worry, when she gets away from the home base, what influence is she going to face? Is she going to have some of those seductive, socialistic kind of mutterings whispered into her ear to try to convince her that capitalism's bad and all this kind of stuff. So this is something that's definitely in the front of my mind.
What's ironic is that most of these kids shouting capitalism is bad would never be caught dead without the newest and greatest iPhone.
Right. iPhone for sure.
Which is the biggest thing in all irony, right? And they buy $300 anti-capitalist hoodies that are capitalistic. It's all a gimmick and an act. And what happens is they get sold on this grand idea. And what it is it's generally these upper middle to upper class kids going to college, getting indoctrinated in this because they feel they're told everyone should live a life like they have, right? However, that's never the reality of Marxism. It never brings people up. What it always does is brings that upper middle class down to the lowest common denominator in favor of the lower classes, while also protecting the upper class, right? And insulating them from the effects of the proletariat. So it's kind of like one of those dichotomies that they miss, right? It's got a romantic sounding ideal, making everyone equal and bringing out equity, but it never happens that way in reality. And it's very easy to buy into it when they tell you, well, shouldn't everyone have a life of privilege like you? Well, yeah, I guess so. But no one says, shouldn't everyone have a poor life like the rest of you, which is how it always turns out.
I mean, so I think that the average kid who is seduced to the world of communism and whatnot, I mean, I don't think that they're going out to say, "Hey, I can't wait to associate with the largest mass murdering political ideology in the history of mankind." I don't think that's the case. I think most kids want to help people, right? And they think that it's this whole kind of, oh well, the wealth gap is too big, in America, and it's not fair. This is obscene that somebody has this much money, and they're not helping the poor people who just don't have anything, right? And the poor people need a leg up because they don't have the opportunities that we have. So I mean, there is a kind of this bleeding heart idealism, I think, is generally the motivating factor that allows these kids to get basically trafficked into this, kind of con game that is communism, right? And so, this kind of gets to some of the things that I did with my kids. And so the first one here is read the right books, right? And so one of the first ones right off the top of the head here that both of my daughters have read is Animal Farm. And it's absolutely appropriate for middle schoolers. Some animals are more equal than others. That's the, kind of like the key line there, towards the end of this. And then also George Orwell's classic 1984. Absolutely, high schoolers should be reading that. Ayn Rand's We the Living, Solzhenitsyn's A Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, Ruta Denisovich. Anyway, Ruta Sepest, I Betray You, and other novels will give readers a look into the life under communism. For a truly chilling look on how Marxist works in schools, read James Clavell's overlooked short story, The Children's Story, now available free online. And so anything that it brings to light the realities of authoritarian or totalitarian communistic regimes, I think, because a lot of times kids connect through fiction in a way that we as adults generally don't, right? The thing that makes them susceptible to communism is the exact same thing that makes them open-minded to strong arguments against communism. And the whole idea here is, and the whole idea here is that it lays out a worldview different from what what they are going to lay down for them.
In our current moment in life, the Gulag Archipelago is absolutely a book that every college student should read. And certainly every adult should read, because when you read it and you see what's happening with the January 6th riots and now the situation in the United Kingdom, his choice is really the choice for us all, right? If only the security forces had to fear us, our lives might have been different, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of where we are.
Well, mentioning Gulag Archipelago is actually kind of takes us to the next one on this list here, which is listen to real life stories. So, the things we were talking about before, like Orwell's Animal Farm in 1984, these are fictional stories set within worlds that illustrate the negatives of totalitarian states. But hearing some of these. There's a lot of guys on YouTube where you've got the guy who lived in Eastern Europe, during the, confronting these college commies, right? And say, listen, have you ever lived in a communist country? No, it's never been tried correctly. Well, I used to live in Poland, or I used to live in, the Eastern Europe or whatever. And let me tell you what communism was really like, and so you actually have these really great testimonial kind of videos, and there's a lot of those on YouTube. I think those are good to kind of put in front of the kids. Says here, if you know somebody who grew up in a former communist country or has escaped from a communist, we've got a lot of people, from Cuba and Venezuela that are able to talk about what living in modern socialist paradise is really like. Here in Korea, seeing the defectors coming from North Korea, just talking about what life is like in North Korea is very eye-opening, especially impactful to my kids.
$5 Rumble rants, so I guess
let me get those. I was just kind of thinking about that. Peter Shay's helicopter tours for $5 over in Rumble says, what do you make of reports of Connex full of rifles reported in Southport, UK, as well as Chicago? Can you believe Massachusetts governor is allowing ICE to deport my private army I've been training?
So what do I make of the reports of those Connexes? I make nothing of them because there's absolutely no evidence of that. How does a Connex full of rifles get to Chicago? All right. Chicago's not on the ocean, right? Someone flew it in? I don't think so. And there was no Connex of rifles found in Southport. Now, that does not mean there are not rifles and arms in mosques. I'm not disputing that at all. But new Connexes full of rifles have not been found.
Yeah.
And there might be a migrant army, though, operating somewhere in Ireland. There's some very interesting video
coming out.
I believe those are Chechens in the video, if I had to make a guess. So something interesting going on there.
Yeah, those are the guys who are wearing the balaclavas and just kind of hanging out. And
the word Chechen certainly comes to mind when you hear them talk. This person kept trying to conflate Arabs and Muslims with me, and I tried to point out to them that Arab does not equal Muslim, and Muslim does not equal Arab. The majority of Muslims in the world, in all honesty, I hate to tell you this, but the majority of Muslims in the world are not actually Arab. So
yeah. Good point. Crazy. Central Europe, Central Asia, and Malaysia, Indonesia,
the Muslim country in the world. So
it's not to say that I wouldn't love to see Connexes full of rifles arriving into.
I'm all about it. I lower the price of the average AK, but
all right. Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good one. All right. So Pinochet's helicopter tours for $5 again. Do you know that in 1954 the CIA went to Walt Disney to have Animal Farm made? Walt feared too many communists in Hollywood, so he sent he sent the CIA to UK to have Animal Farm made under Operation Touchstone. Yeah, Walt Disney was a absolute American patriot and stood against the communists. Let's be honest, did he do it because
what's happened at Disney since then, right?
Right. Well, let's be honest. Let's just assume he was absolutely self-centered when he did this. It was because the communists were absolutely endemic in Hollywood and were really making life difficult for the labor unions were just full of communism. So yeah.
Hunter, well done. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Joe,
the hashtag.
Yeah. Well, speaking of hashtags, Joe, did you see my shirt here?
Yeah, Brodesia. I know who made that shirt.
That's right.
She's still in bed though.
My wife was like, I've never seen this shirt before. I was like, that's right. This is the first time I'm wearing it. All right. So the next one here on the list is kitchen table learning. So this is discuss daily news with your teens, both events abroad and here at home. You know that I'm doing this with my kids. Turn on the evening news and critique it. Point out the works like privileged and marginalized communities, the oppressed, gender identity. These are all terms associated with the left. I mean, so this is the kind of thing that has, really allowed me to kind of gauge not only where their head's at, but like what are they hearing from their friends, right? What are the kind of the hot button topics that are influencing the kids at school? And both of my daughters kind of identified leftist stuff, leftist influences in some of their teachers, and for sure, even here in Dodia land, you see the pride flags and whatnot in certain classrooms, and you just make the kids aware of what that really stands for versus the kind of the Pollyanna, sunshine and rainbows idea of what the pride really is, what they want you to believe it is versus what it really is. So, within the United States, there are far left groups that either declare themselves Marxist or follow Marxist precedents. Either conceal themselves under innocuous titles, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, for instance, takes an old-fashioned approach to Marxism with its radical support for Vladimir Lenin and Mao Zedong.
Let me point out the PSL. As much as they want to scream about right-wing militias, the PSL is 100% a left-wing armed militia. 100%.
All right. Real quick, we got a $10 super chat over here in Rumble. Random PNW guy 84 for $10 says, the IRA needs a comeback. The old timers need to teach the young guys how to fight. They need to show them it's better to be seen as a hero by your neighbors than a few bucks as a drug dealer. Now, the only thing I would caution you about, and there are reasons behind this, but ultimately the IRA was a generally Marxist-leaning organization. Now that had well, Sinn Féin absolutely is where most of those guys, because the real Marxists weren't so much the guys out in the, they were the elites that were kind of backing, the play, and that's why how Sinn Féin ended up with most of the ideologues. You spelled cult wrong. So anyway, the IRA, if we can divorce it from its Marxist origins, I think it's absolutely.
Well, I guarantee you they're out digging up rifles, but the majority of those rifles were AKs because they got them from the Soviets.
Well, the majority of those rifles have probably corroded at this point.
There's probably a few dropped FALs among them, though, and the FAL in British DPM. jacket is sort of a vibe for the IRA. So.
Well, yeah, with the balaclava, or the ski mask, right? And the old AR-18 was another favorite of the IRA back in the day. And then the best antidote of all is essentially what we kind of the prescription that we hold here in America is we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So teaching the words of the Declaration of Independence to your children, explain that no government can grant or take away their unalienable rights, that they are the core part of what it means to be human. Now, Joe, the sad thing is what I have just said is now considered far right-wing, just absolutely terrible, kind of things to say. Speaking of terrible things to say, Watcher, welcome. I understand you had a little car on deer action yesterday. I hope everything's okay.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good.
You sound perfect. Yeah.
Oh, neat. It defaulted to the right one then. Nice. Yeah. We were up in Montana for a week and saw all kinds of deer, but never saw a single buck. And then we found the buck coming home.
Well, I hope you took him and threw him in the back and quartered him, and you're processing that meat right now.
I know. Yeah, no. We are not sure which direction that thing got blown, but yeah, wife wanted to find it and take the antlers at least, but we couldn't figure out which way it went.
Mount him right on the hood of the car and be like, take that.
Well, I just
clearly didn't hit it hard enough.
I just thought it was funny that the officer who was doing the crash report sat there for a very long time, kind of talking to us, and then at the end of it turns to his wife and goes, I've decided not to charge you for poaching.
Well, so much damage, or
it's going to be totaled for sure. But everybody's okay, and that's what's important. So
all right, good. Well, that's too bad. So hopefully insurance will take care of you.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Anyway, so Joe, what I just read is absolutely radical ideology that is not fit for.
According to the DHS, it is evidence of extremism.
Yeah, right wing, domestic violent extremists.
The Constitution and the Declaration, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so essentially, you need to teach your children about not just the ideas of liberty and freedom, but also the men and women who actually built the country, right? Teach them about the founding fathers. You make sure they know the names to look up. I don't know about you guys, but independently, my kids have looked up whether it's Christian teachings about freedom and liberty, or some of the founding fathers' writings, just to kind of Dad, I always hear you talking about the Second Amendment. I read about, from the Federalist Papers about and I read this and I couldn't believe it. I was like, yeah.
Some might say that it is for freedom's sake that Christ has set you free. Stand firm then, and never again allow yourselves to be burdened by a yoke of slavery. That's Galatians 5:1, and communism is absolutely a yoke of slavery.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to just kind of talk about that. We went a little longer on that segment than
that was the foundation of my speech on Sunday that you missed because you overslept.
Yeah, that's right. I did oversleep. That's correct. I deserved it though.
Okay.
Did we drink a lot the night before? I can't remember. All right. Watcher, welcome to the show. How are things going with you? All things considered.
Just deeply grateful that nobody was hurt. And shocked at the value of vehicles these days. How does one actively drive a minivan and have it appreciate in value? These are questions I ask myself now.
Yeah, I think it was there in Montana. I told the story about how we went from a $500 assessment on our Escape to, like 2 years later, a $3,500 sale on it. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, basically that. Things are kind of decent, and like I said, glad nobody's hurt. But I unfortunately might see myself in a Rogue in the near future.
Yeah. I heard there's nothing wrong with the Nissan Rogue. Nice car.
I heard that it sometimes confuses grass for people and won't let you back up.
This is a fact. Don's sitting in the passenger seat as that's happening, going, "This is the most ridiculous car I've ever been in." I'm like, it's not ridiculous. It just thinks it's smarter than I am.
If the nanny state were a car, it would be Joe's Nissan
Rogue.
Nissan
Rogue, 100%.
I've actually got
trying to do a roadblock at the community security class, and it wouldn't let me get closer to Brent's truck. It's like, dude, there's a truck in front of you. Like, I know.
Yeah, I've got my car in the shop for a couple weeks, and I've got a rental, and it's a nice new car. I think it's a 2022, but I describe driving as like driving a marshmallow. It's like super wishy-washy, and I just some of these modern cars nowadays are just kind of like so
hey, that's squishy. If the good Lord carried a rifle, it would be the Garand. I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh no, Joe.
The rifle that freed the world. Absolutely. The Garand.
Well, like 100 years ago. All right, I won't argue that. Gentlemen, let's
listen. I got to say it. There are two rifles that are the top contender for having killed the most people ever. Rifle number 1 is the M1 Garand. Rifle number 2 is the Mosin Nagant. So it's one of those two. And
I don't know, man. I don't know. You could argue that the Car 98 is probably as high as the Mosin Nagant, because most of the people
Mosin Nagant killed all those Germans on the way out.
No. I would not want to be on the Russian side of that kill ratio. Over the what is it, the 6 years of that war. Let's see. All right. Anything else, gentlemen? Joe, you want to talk a little tactical wisdom real quick before we move over?
I suppose. Hey, if you are going to be in the greater Michigan area this weekend, Tactical Wisdom will be making an appearance at the Michigan Preparedness Picnic in Swartz Creek, Michigan, on Linden Road. It's at some church. You'll see it. They'll have all the flags. And I'll be giving a couple of speeches, one on organizing for community and the other one on home security, as well as moderating the firearms panel. So we're going to have a lot of great talks and great training out there. There will be a lot of people out there. Pinochet, you can absolutely get Nagant thumb because it loads the same way. But anyway, so come on out and see us if you're going to be in the area. Watch tacticalwisdom.com. There'll be another article coming up this week that will also include some more information from our gathering in Montana. We have a class coming up next week in North Carolina. Enrollment's a little light, so if you want some more one-on-one time learning about community security operations in beautiful Providence, North Carolina, head over to tactical-wisdom.com and sign up. There's a few slots available. Also, be prepared. Anyone else who's on the OPFOR who might be watching, I could use an OPFOR or two to role play some checkpoint interactions and stuff. So, if you know anyone available for OPFOR, let me know.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I mean,
what part of the country again is that class going to be in?
North Carolina, and you're not driving anywhere right now.
Oh yeah, obviously. But no, I was just So yeah, if you're in North Carolina, and
no, you're on the app for Montana for sure.
oh, for sure. But I was meaning fans. If you've what are the qualifications to be OPT4? Right, they have to take in at least one of the classes before, right?
Generally, but this class not really, because really all the interactions in the community security thing are people appearing at your roadblock or checkpoint generally. Right. So the ability
you
to
just need
be
role
loud
players.
does help out.
All right. Let's jump into our main topic here today. So,
she can watch in Michigan if she wants, because the class is not in Michigan. Good luck. Anyway,
I'll watch you. You are on the sharing piece now. So we've got the map first, actually.
Oh,
yes, there we go. Yeah. We got to do the Ukraine Russia stuff first. And so we've this is basically just an updated map, and so you can continue to see the kind of the fingers of doom stretching into Russia. Some of these are aspirational, like this kind of blue arrow up and to the left, whereas the one kind of going like due north is, I think, more probably in line with what we've seen from actual reporting. Excuse me. And down at the bottom, kind of near the shoulder of the salient, we've got another kind of aspirational blue arrow kind of pushing further into Russia. So I think, we talked on Monday about what their options are. Basically, they can try to hold what they have and continue to push. They can pull back to, consolidate in more defensible terrain, but still maintain some of their gains from this offensive. Or they can essentially declare victory and then pull all their troops back to Ukraine, which would preserve combat power. But theoretically, you could kind of you give the Russian space to say, oh yeah, we kicked their ass and they ran home, right? So there's always that kind of negative PR campaign that could come out of something like that. Joe, one of the things that we've talked about significantly on Monday was the fact that there's this offensive is fraught with peril, right? You're essentially robbing Peter to pay Paul, pulling forces that you need down in the, Donbass and moving them up to this area. But at the same time, this is dangerous, right? This is going on the offensive is dangerous stuff, and we're seeing is like an actual response by top tier Russian forces at this point, and so they are taking significant attrition in this area now.
Well, the problem that I see is the three different directions we're going in. You need to consolidate that into one so that you can defend it. Otherwise, you can't defend any of it. We're about to have a wild Thor sighting. This is Thor, everybody. He's not supposed to be back here, and he knows it.
That is a big boy.
He's a very big boy. Thor's about 120 pounds of not listening. Anyway, so they need to really limit this down to one so they can actually defend their LOCs. Otherwise, they're going to have real problems feeding, supplying, and evacuating the wounded from these areas. And we're already seeing Russia swooping in from the sides. And one of the questions I saw raised yesterday was, did Ukraine fall for a Russian trap? And I don't believe that's the case. I think Ukraine totally surprised them. But Russia's ability to muster reserves is something that can never be discounted. And it's why you don't invade Russia proper.
Yeah, I mean, Russia is large, slow, and ponderous, and even they are able to respond eventually. So,
well, historically, all of this is going to do is harden Russian resolve. It's not going to force them to the negotiating table. The Russian people are very sensitive to invasion, and this is going to actually make the people not want any sort of deals or concessions, but now want to wipe Iran off the map. I mean, Ukraine off the map.
Yeah,
I mean, both are good ideas, but One's
All right,
more
let me
likely.
read a little bit of this. Is a little bit of the update here from War Mapper on X. This is the Kursk offensive update. Ukraine has strengthened its positions around Sheptukovka. They have also renewed attacks on the Korinovo, and are now present on the outskirts of the settlement. Further south, Ukraine has captured the settlement of Plekhov and struck at Giri, 15 kilometers to the east. So they're kind of pushing in, like you said, Joe, several different directions, and they are at risk at this point of getting overextended, but we'll see. Ultimately, if they overextend themselves, they will be punished, and the Russians have a lot of different tools that they can do that. All right, let's move on to our next one here. So to this end, this is the war zone reporting. Ukraine eyeing expansion of Kursk invasion despite Russian reinforcements. So I get the feeling this is this is good. More of a good thing can't be bad, right? So let's continue to push, right? Maybe some of the forces that they haven't committed yet, they could go ahead and commit those, and with the idea of continuing the positive results. It says here, despite Russia's pouring of reinforcement to counter the now 8-day-old invasion of Kursk, Ukraine is continuing to try and expand its footprint there, pushing to the north and west. Ukrainian forces have opened new fronts, the western part of Kursk Oblast near Slobodka and Ivanovka, taking control of several cities. The Ukrainian Center of Defense Strategies think tank stated on Tuesday. In anticipation of this effort, however, Ukraine tried to blow up a bridge over the Simi River to halt Russian logistics in that area, according to Russian. And we've seen even the the Ukrainians pushing close air support into the area, to this area. That shows quite a bit of confidence on the part of the Ukrainians if they're able to operate Su-27s and MiG-29s that are basically bomb trucks dropping JDAM ERs and other Western weapon systems in that area. Let's see. Kind of going further down. Let's see if there's anything here. Yeah. If there's a clash report tweet here, watch, you could pull up. That's got some of the Ukrainian Su-27 flying low over the Kursk region. So I mean, yeah, in order for them to be operating air support like this in this area, they've got to be pretty damn confident that the air defense artillery in the area is suppressed. And so talking about Ukrainian fighters dropping U.S. JDAMs in the area, which I think that would be the first time they've used the JDAM ERs on Russian territory, but I could be wrong. Here's UAV footage of some of the.
Russia's going to have enough of this and do something about it. Particularly with the stories that these Ukrainian fighters are now going to be basing out of Romania and Poland. That's going to be a real problem from a Russian perspective. And I think that Poland and Romania need to understand that then makes them legitimate targets.
Right. That's a good point.
Have to deal with these dogs. Stand by.
Just kind of reading through here a little more, see if there's any kind of high points on it. Clearly, the U.S. and U.K. weapons are being used in this assault. Despite the difficulties and intense battles, our forces continue to advance in the Kursk region, and our state's exchange fund is growing. And he said a reference to the increasing flow of Russian prisoners of war who could be traded for Ukrainian ones. So far, 74 communities are under Ukrainian control, where inspections and stabilization measures are being carried out. The development of humanitarian solutions for these territories continues. So I've seen a lot made over the. Yeah, this is footage of the Sever group, which is I think they are a PMC that is associated with the Chechen Special Forces. And this is a kind of react to contact. So one of their vehicles did against Ukrainian. So this is not Ukrainians. These are Russians. Sean, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Good morning.
Good morning. Sitting here, we're talking a little bit about what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. So had a lot of fun.
A lot more bad tactics, judging on what things I saw.
Yeah. So you, Watcher, is this the destroyed? Yeah, I think this is the destroyed tanks. No, this is not. Oh yeah. I guess this is the same one that you just showed. So this is interesting. This is a Ukrainian PT-91, which is a Polish version of the T-72 with modernized features. That's the second tank. And then the first tank is a T-72 AV. So these are two kind of tanks used specifically by some of these better trained Ukrainian units. So we are seeing some of the kind of best and brightest of the Ukrainian military being used in this. We've also got the I can't remember which unit it is, but they are equipped with strikers, and we're starting to see some of those strikers get left on the side of the road and otherwise engaged. So that is indicative that these troops are some of the best for Ukraine. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. So, Joe, we talked a little bit about kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And so I think this account here by this post by Rob Lee is actually pretty good. So this is two Ukrainian soldiers awaiting orders to join the battle in Kursk said they had just arrived from the front line area near Pokrovsky, where Ukrainian forces are under heavy pressure. He said, "We came to help." Another soldier said he was surprised to learn he's being transferred to the Sumy border region as his unit was so short of men that infantry spent as long as 45 days straight in a trench. The 25-year-old had been stationed in Chazov Yar, one of the hottest spots in the front line, until a week before the incursion. It's almost like, Joe, they have these soldiers that they absolutely need. And they pulled them off the defensive line just so they could do this offensive operation that ultimately doesn't get them anything strategic.
Well, as I keep pointing out, this is the Instagram war, right? And the cool video that I can get and the good graphics we can generate by showing us penetrating deeply into Russia, the more public support I can get, and the more we look like the good guys who are fighting against a Leviathan.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it makes strategic sense, but it makes sense in the public opinion war. This is the first war that's been so heavily invested in social media. And look at what it's done. It's gotten people now to deny objective reality. I put out a tweet yesterday saying that you and I said exactly this was going to happen. And the NAFO bros pounced, saying that we were believing Russian propaganda and blah, blah, blah. No, we're talking about objective reality. This was a bad idea. And they're getting hit exactly as we've said they would, not because we're great military minds, but because we've studied history and we know what is a good military tactic and what is not. You don't send all of your forces out in 5 different directions at the same time. You pick one and you make it strong. But because of the cool optics they're getting from it, it enables people to deny that objective reality and say, no, they're totally winning, bro. And sources, I made it up. Right.
Yeah. Well, Joe, one of the things, it's all going great until it stops. And one of the most difficult types of operations to do under fire is an orderly withdrawal under fire. And essentially, I don't think that's what would happen. I think it would essentially disintegrate, and we'd be able to account for all the parts of it later. But ultimately, that combat power is going to be, kind of decremented very significantly if they're unable to withdraw without some sort of a very clear plan. So yeah, like instead of pouring more troops into it, the only thing I'd be doing at this point is trying to figure out a way to pull my people back to a defensive perimeter, and then go. You want to push it back later, then you can do that, but keep it sane for now. Yeah, I thought this was an interesting post all in all, and I think it was worth a read. Rob Lee does a pretty good job of doing consistent posts on Ukraine. So check him out. All right. So, this is a report that I saw pop up in the last couple of days. And this video is pretty interesting. These are some fairly successful looking first person drone firing at U.S. targets. Well, not U.S. targets, but Ukrainian targets, but some of it's U.S. manufactured gear. Like I think that last one was a 113.
Well, this is important. So these drones are fiber optic
guided, right?
Video. So
Watcher, you're a little smarter about this stuff than Joe and I. Explain how that would work.
Oh Jesus. Well, actually. The old missiles and the wire guided ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I have some questions as to how much power you'd need in order to be able to.
Yeah, carrying that line would be pretty
down
heavy.
a road with trees.
Yeah.
Well, everybody keeps fighting out in the open, so
just because they're doing it doesn't mean it's right.
Which is something we've pointed out for 2 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, my headphones turned off for a second there, but you can watch it. It looks like it's playing pretty good, and I assume now there's no way that they're doing this with something just like this, but like what the Red Bull thing does, 200 miles an hour, or just 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so you got to assume that it could be able to do 250 while hauling a fairly light cable. The thing is though, that's blown glass, as I seem to remember, those fiber optic cables, and I suppose you're just always at risk of, hey, if I maneuver too much, I break the cable. But
all right, let's jump into this next one here. Yeah, I wouldn't. It's bad day all the way around for these guys. Ukrainians running into these guys. So it's not just. Potentially, it's not just the Kursk area. Russian ally sends tanks to Ukrainian border. So what's behind Belarus's military buildup along the Ukrainian border? Well, I wouldn't be honest if we didn't see Russia try to tap Belarus in part of a response, some sort of an offensive response out of Belarus into Ukraine. And do it in conjunction with Belarusian forces. That wouldn't surprise me, but ultimately, it's one of those kind of things where.
Well, I'm going to be honest that this media fear mongering that keeps happening about every 3 months about Belarus building up along the Ukrainian border. If you remove the fact that it's Belarus and you just objectively said, okay, country A borders country B. Country B is in an active war, and there are rockets and planes and troops moving all over that country. What's country A going to do? Naturally, going to go ahead and bolster that border. And then, just as the article says, factor in the fact that Kiev just flies their aircraft wherever it wants to. yeah, that tells you why they're doing it. It's not necessarily because they're just about to invade and join the war. It could very well just be for self-defense. Why is Poland building up its military along the Ukrainian border? Same reason.
Yeah, listener, are we just gonna pretend that the Ukraine hasn't become an incredibly bad neighborhood in Eastern Europe,
Right?
and that they don't have partisan forces that will come over your borders, smuggle weapons, and potentially get your people smacked with anti-aircraft missiles? Ask the Poles.
One could say they might be there to prevent weapon smuggling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me read a little bit of this. So it's considering let's see, the Ukrainian embassy is considering shutting down in Minsk. This follows their border crisis from a little more than a month ago after Ukraine's military buildup back then, and comes amidst Ukrainian sneak attack against Russia's Kursk region, both of which were analyzed below. And so it gives some articles about that. In brief, the first crisis de-escalated after Kiev reportedly removed its troops first, and then Minsk naively assumed the neighbor thus had no aggressive intentions, so it followed suit. While the second is a natural culmination of those aforesaid attacks, it should also be said that Belarus' decision to de-escalate border tensions with Ukraine inadvertently freed up more of the latter's forces for invading Russia, even though that's, of course, not what Lukashenko intended to have happen. Excuse me. So yeah, guys, I mean, this is interesting to see these developments coming up in Belarus. I think that, Joe, we've talked about ever since Prigozhin showed up in Belarus to start training forces there. I mean, I think Belarus is essentially behind the times with a lot of the Russian military doctrine at this point and the lessons learned. And so I think that knowledge transfer is critical to making Belarus a full, member of whatever it is they'll have going forward. So,
yeah,
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
The fog of war makes it difficult to accurately assess the situation in the Kursk region, but it's almost reports. Yeah, so the Kursk, I think, is definitely having some effects throughout the area. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into our second topic of the day. So we're talking Iran here a little bit. Iran has been making a lot of noise after following the assassination of the Hamas leader there in Tehran. And Joe, we had called this, like we'd said at the beginning of the show, we had called this a while back that Israel is just it's just a matter of time, and they're biding their time on exactly when Iran will strike Israel for these attacks, right? But the longer they wait, the more question marks come out of it. And, I think we all kind of agree that Iran's going to get their pound of flesh. We just don't know how they're going to do it. The thing that makes the most sense is some sort of a retaliatory attack similar to what we saw in April with just more missiles, more capability. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Let's see here. It says Iran signals it's climbing down from Israel attack plans 2 weeks after Hania killings. What's that?
I was on mute, but I had a point there. I think that one, we're seeing a smart response by Israel. When Hezbollah launched a bunch of rockets, they didn't engage the Iron Dome. That was saving their best resource for the biggest attack that's coming. Yeah. And two, I think Iran was doing a little bit of payback to Hamas, who said, "Hey, can you wait until we get whatever we can get from Israel on Thursday, and then you can do whatever you want on Friday. But on Thursday, I needs to get mine, yo." They need to get whatever they can get out of Israel on Thursday's negotiation.
An Iranian attack on Israel could be delayed amidst hope for negotiations later this week for a hostage release. So that would be the Hamas-Israel ceasefire negotiations. And essentially, essentially, well, anyway, I think there's more to these negotiations than what we're seeing out in the open. Let's see. Several reports in recent days indicated that Israel believes Iran intends to attack before Thursday's renewed talks for a deal. The new comment appeared to signal the attack would only take place after those talks. Watcher, Sean, any thoughts you guys have on potential Iran backing down a little bit on this?
Watcher, you want to go first?
I don't really have any. I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they haven't attacked, I think, is strange in of itself, but going beyond that, it kind of outstrips my ability to understand these, fucking idiots.
Well, is it possible, and I guess this is a Joe question, but maybe a you question as well, is it possible that they burnt up so much stuff the last go round that they're having to just back off until they have the supplies?
No. That's absolute. No. Number one, they're one of the largest weapons producers in the Middle East, and they supply everyone. So no. Also, there's been a nonstop train of Russian aircraft arriving with material on it. So good question, but no.
Yeah.
Okay. And I don't have, that would be the only thing that would have made sense to me is, shit, it's going to take 2 months to rebuild the stuff we need. That would have been the only thing that would have explained it to me.
All right.
Now, on the flip side, they may not want to mess up the good business they're doing selling drones all over the world. So,
well, the interesting thing here is that despite the fact that there may be indications that Iran is interested in talking or maybe not going completely kinetic, Pentagon says an attack by Iran on Israel is certainly possible this week. We need to take it seriously. Of course, they want to take it seriously. Mr. Anti-Commie here real quick for $5. I'm ashamed Watcher isn't going with a quality manufacturer in Toyota, a Sienna or a Highlander.
Could be built
interesting. Hold on. I mean, what's this?
Lance Corporal Veteran for $5 says that just because you make weapons doesn't mean you have a surplus. Ukraine had the same problem.
But Iran has a surplus. They absolutely have a surplus.
Hold up.
Yeah.
I see something. Huh. Weird.
Well, those were the week that Anti-Commie wasn't at work because he had a baby, so it wasn't.
So what's the Pentagon have to say here? U.S. military maneuvers for resources to the Middle East, including USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. Like we said earlier in the show, there are no carriers in the Pacific at this point. If I remember correctly, it's 4 now in the vicinity of the Middle East region. Pentagon spokesperson told reporters on Tuesday that an attack by Iran on Israel is certainly possible this week, adding that the predictive.
Well, the biggest indicator that we as a country, our intelligence services, see an attack coming is that the Ford left the Persian Gulf several weeks early and is now steaming in giant circles outside of the Straits of Hormuz in the Red Sea. So that's a pretty good sign that we know something is coming across the Persian Gulf. We wouldn't leave a carrier strike group in the restricted waters of the Gulf War when Iran was launching an attack somewhere. We would not give them an easy target like that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Says here, is the attack possible this week? So that's certainly possible, Ryder said. The bottom line is I'm not going to speculate or try to guess when they made attack other than to say that we need to take it seriously, and we are doing that. Yeah, I think there are plenty of indicators that they may attack, but kind of like the previous article said, there may be good reason for them not to attack, especially if they have a more long view or something like that, or if maybe they're planning something a little more asymmetric that takes a little longer to put the pieces together. That's just kind of stuff that
ultralights landing in the middle of music festivals and such.
Exactly right. They sure have the plan for how to make it bloody and successful for their part. So it should be interesting. All right. Ryder said the Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin ordered the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group to the Middle East, adding the capabilities already provided by the U.S. Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group.
Hold on a second. Can we scroll back up to that picture? It says right there, Press Secretary Major General. That, my friends, is a brigadier general, not a major general.
Well, I wonder if it's a major general billet that a brigadier general is filling, and it's clearly a mistake on their part here.
Anyway,
but then yes. What do you expect from Getty Images?
Well done, brigadier.
Yes,
the Air
jolly
Force.
Jolly good show, chap, old chap. Yeah, so it's interesting just depending on who you listen to, right? This was the hotness kind of in the evening of the U.S. time last night, but now you're having a lot of people call in the question the entire conversation that these came out of. Is it important at this critical time in history that you send a very clear signal to Iran that if they attack, launch a major attack on Israel and or its proxies, the United States military will attack? I am also hearing that there's a secret deal in the place by the Kamala Harris administration to potentially pull out all the U.S. soldiers in Iraq, which very interesting.
Which is interesting, given some information I got from a confidential human source who will not be named, that every day this week, IL-76s from Iran have been landing at Baghdad International. And yesterday, a large group of men, all dressed similarly in military style attire, contractor types, boarded buses and left into the city. One of the key elements of this retaliation is that in addition to the killing in Tehran and the killing in wherever else the Hamas guy was killed at, the Hezbollah guy was killed at. Oh, that was in Lebanon. And then there was also an attack by U.S. forces against Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq. So this appearance of a large number of Iranian aircraft and personnel flowing into Iraq would lead me to believe that there's potentially a ground attack against some of our bases in that area in the works. So I would watch for that.
Watcher Sean, anything more on this?
Yeah. I have something less serious than something serious. I did find this bit of commentary that I thought was interesting.
Hello, my name is Jamal. Every 7 days in Africa, a week passes.
Sorry.
A leaf. Anyway.
No, it was what do I think is going to go on? I am very confused, honestly. It does not seem in character with anything I've ever been told about Iran, and I wonder if maybe that's a part of it, right? That the narrative game has tried to be so much of theirs that maybe they're allowing themselves to kind of take it on the chin in public. I don't know. I can't imagine that going on for very long, and I can't imagine. Anyhow.
Well, speaking of strange bedfellows and kind of people that are getting involved, U.S. seeks Iran de-escalation with Turkey's help. So once again, this is another story from oilprice.com. The United States is calling on its allies to maintain relations with Iran to persuade them for not escalating further tensions in the Middle East. The U.S. ambassador to Turkey, Jeff Flake, said, "We ask our allies that have any relations with Iran to prevail on them to de-escalate, and that includes Turkey."
Turkey, the ones who last week were essentially saying, "Yeah, we're going to invade Israel too." Am I remembering that wrong?
I mean, the difference is Erdogan is rather famous for talking out of both ends of his ass. So,
well, he is very good
on who he wants to get money out of at the time.
Yeah, he is very good at kind of having a public and a private separate personas. He also likes to vamp for the cameras for domestic political consumption as well.
So then what good is a guy who could be blown any direction at any time for any amount of money? What good is his public backing of literally anything?
Which is a point that a lot of policy wonks have been making at least since 2014.
All right, it just doesn't surprise me at all that Erdogan is balls deep into this whole mess. And if anything, Joe, I think this potentially signals that longer term kind of game that Iran may be playing. It's like, hey, Israel, you bought yourself a couple weeks, but we're going to hit you eventually.
Israel can't not respond. I mean, they absolutely have to.
Yeah. Who decided that this was Jeff, ambassador to Turkey? Okay, so I guess that makes sense.
Absolutely has Anthony Blinken's fingerprints all over it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah.
Well,
this
I was going to say though,
Fox to negotiate with the chickens.
Well, right? I feel a little less bad because it looks like it's coming out of the ambassador to Turkey, Jeff Flake. And I guess if you're the ambassador to Turkey, right, it's like if you have a hammer, every problem is a nail. If you're the ambassador to Turkey, every geopolitical problem is how can we lean on Turkey?
Well, I mean, yes. All right, guys. That's all I got for the show today.
I want to give one reminder, though, before we get off that last topic. I will remind everyone that during Turkey's most recent invasion into Syria, as they began to approach a couple of American bases, and they were asked, I believe it was Manjib where this was happening, when they were asked, hey, what are you going to do when you get to where the Americans are? And Erdogan's response was, if anyone is in our way and anyone opposes us, we will fight them. Now, their offensive halted before they got there, but the comment was made, right, that we were protecting the people that Turkey was fighting, and if we were in the way, they would absolutely have no problem attempting to roll right over us. That would not have went the way they thought it was going to go, but the comment was made there, and I think we need to remember that Turkey does not have our best interests in mind at all.
Right.
And quite frankly, if they didn't hold the Bosphorus Strait, they would not be in NATO at all.
Well, yeah, they are a self-interested actor who, is looking out for number one, essentially.
The only reason they were ever in NATO was to try and cut off access to that strait. But yeah, Erdogan is about how much money can I bilk out of who this week, and he always has been, and it seems like he's always going to be. Although I guess people can change, but I don't think he's going to. And we better remember that the second our money runs out, he'll do whatever the highest bidder is. And he's been proven
Keep in mind, too, how long did it take him to close the Bosporus Strait to new Russian ships? 3 months after the war started, before he said no more naval assets can pass through.
Yeah.
after allowing them to pass an entire battle group through. So, good point.
Yeah, that's a real good point. Hey, Joe, let's go around the horn here. Looking towards the week, going into the weekend. Domestic stuff, I think, is going to be pretty hot. A lot of kind of hair pulling and gnashing of teeth going on in the presidential campaign. We've got the DNC coming up soon. That should be, even with the fait accompli of Kamala, that should be interesting for the protest action. Not, if only that. What else, Joe?
I will say watch for this. Yesterday, there was a fairly large and out of the blue pro-Palestine protest on the 405. I would watch for a lot more of that to happen as we get closer to the DNC and closer to a potential Iranian response to Israel or an Israeli ground incursion into Hezbollah. Either way, you're going to get more of these pro-Palestinian marches. They don't even care about the Palestinian cause. They're using it as cover for action. It's a reason for the revolutionary communists and the Marxists to get out, block traffic, create havoc, and create chaos. So watch for more domestic unrest.
Yep, I think that's a safe bet.
You gotta stay awake for the whole show, Scott. The whole show.
Sean, what's your kind of take on the heading towards the end of the week?
So actually, instead of that, Joe, question. Walls is as close to what they want as they can get. Does that factor?
Regarding what?
Antifa.
Huh?
Walls is about as close to what they want as they can get.
You're falling for the media trick. That's what the media tells you Antifa wants. Go to an Antifa event and listen to what they want. They want a complete Marxist overthrow of the United States and abolishment of the United States system. Yeah. Walls does not get that.
Yeah, but I mean, he's to the left of Bernie. So
okay, but as long as we're here, no.
As long as it's the United States government, they don't want it.
He publicly expresses himself as to the left of Bernie. How do I need to back up. I think a lot of times, because the left does work together, we all assume that they all are together. And I have alluded many times on this show to the fact that that is not, in fact, the case. Right. There is a corporate left that is messaging as though they are communists because they're using the communists as their street thugs, and they won't get that if they don't at least pay the lip service. The street thugs believe they're going to be successful in fully overthrowing the corporate left, and so they're willing to go along with it so long as so long as it furthers their aims and they hear the right language they keep wanting to hear out of the corporate left. But the two are diametrically opposed in what they're eventually seeking to gain. There is no future in which those two factions of the party don't go to war. And in fact, it's already kind of quietly happening, which is why Rashida Tlaib, I believe that's the squad member. One of the squad members just lost.
Cori Bush.
That's not Rashida.
Cori Bush, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cori Bush just lost her re-election campaign. So
keep in mind, she lost her re-election campaign, and everyone's like, "Yay!" Kind of the person who beat her is 10 times worse than she is.
Yeah.
Correct, but I don't believe the person who beat her is politically aligned with the squad, which is they're kind of
to the left of the squad.
Oh, facts. But what I just mean is I'm just speaking about the factional warfare. Yeah.
Okay. Then as far as like what do I want people to look out for this week?
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's less about looking out and more about looking in. It's time to strengthen your bonds with your people around you. Embrace for what comes next, or for the fact that you might need to QRF for somebody if there's unrest, and get together with your people, your local people, because that's about to matter.
Yeah, 100%.
So you know what? I think you just decided on this week's article topic, right? Developing a
Nice.
local emergency plan and having a QRF. A QRF doesn't mean come in guns a-blazing. A QRF might mean they roll up in a car, you get in the car, and everyone drives away. But having that ability to reach out to someone, absolutely, great point.
And once again, Joe, the networks that you make in person will last much, will be much stronger than those that you make over the internet. So if you have local people that you've never met before that you're connected with on the internet, make sure you get out locally and meet them.
Yeah. On that note, I have a couple folks who are attending the National Guard Association meeting here in Detroit, and they're all like, "Hey, man, come meet us. We'd like to see you." 100%.
Yep. And just to put a fine point on what Scott said there about internet friends. Look, my best friend in the world at this point is probably Don the Pleb. Duh, if you hadn't figured that out. And if he calls, I'm going. It's also an 11.5-hour drive. Think about that. Think about that.
All right. Well, I will, for my turn then, say a couple of things. And the first is I can't wait for Tactical Wisdom 6 snowmobile operations and game harvesting. I think that's going to be an exciting chapter in the Tactical Wisdom brand. Speaking of,
might make a chapter in there, but yeah.
Speaking of game harvesting specifically, Joe, when I was on the side of the freeway, he said, "I feel terrible." And I was like, "It's not your fault. It's not even my wife's fault. She was driving, but the deer jumped out at us." So, but there is my wife did decide on one thing, Joe, that we could do to help, and I've already kind of run it by you, and so we're going to be going on a bit of a herd thinning mission, as it were.
And if there's one place where it needs to be thinned out, it's Flathead County, Montana. That's for sure.
That is factual, correct. So I'm going to put in for
talk
some
about
tags.
these things on the internet. Who knows who's watching?
Oh, that's true. That's true. But I'm going to put in for some tags, and we'll do it legally. But we're going to draw that down. But I will say, guys, do what you can in your local area. There's a concept that I've been trying to become comfortable with myself, which is I can't affect the world entirely, but the things that actually matter to me, I can at least say not within my arm's reach.
Yeah. All right, gents. That's about all we've got for today. Hour and 43 minutes, a little shorter than the average. Thanks for Watcher and Sniper jumping in later in the show. Joe, as always, I appreciate you being my right-hand man on this. I couldn't do it without you, so thank you very much. We've got definitely we'll be doing some domestic focus on Friday. So get your Rumble links ready for that. If you haven't done it already, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell for notifications, let people know that you're getting good stuff here. Guys, as always, stay safe.